Olajuwon. He was in the top 10 in 5 categories: steals, rebounds, block shots, scoring, and shooting percentage. You know what I mean? To have a big guy of his size to be in the top 10 in steals. Now you can assume that he would be in blocks, which to me shows versatility of what type of guy he really was.
Yeah, the Dream was my favorite because personal reasons. And the reason was he was a guy that I couldn't break. The 5 best centers, I'm glad you had to write them down. Hakeem to me is number 1.
But why couldn't you break him?
Because I couldn't get into his head. I remember one time I gave him a bow and he just laughed. nice elbow, brother. And then he came down and gave me a and shot a crazy fadeaway. Yeah, he gave me one of them.
It's no secret that Hakeem Olajuwon is one of the greatest centers of NBA history, but when you stack up his accomplishments to the accomplishments of other great centers of NBA history, you have a stronger argument than many realize for Hakeem to be considered the greatest all-around center of NBA history. Hakeem is one that's even better than advertised, and I'll prove it to you the way I always try to do, by starting from the beginning of his career and traveling through the course of it as we appreciate his legacy. Olajuwon was selected with the first overall pick by the Houston Rockets in the 1984 draft. There was immediately lots of hype around this team as fellow great big man Ralph Sampson was already on the Rockets roster. With the combination of the 7'4" Sampson and the 7-foot Olajuwon, the Rockets were expected to quickly become serious threats in the Western Conference, and that's exactly what they did, as they went from a 29-53 team to a 48-34 team after the addition of Olajuwon. As a 22-year-old in his rookie campaign, he averaged a stellar 20.6 points, 11.9 rebounds, and 2.7 blocks on 53.8% shooting while playing all 82 games. It was excellent enough to make the All-Star team in his very first season. Unfortunately for Hakeem, Michael Jordan was also a rookie that year, so Hakeem had to settle for runner-up for the Rookie of the Year award. Hakeem and Jordan were the only players that year to receive Rookie of the Year votes. Their season ultimately ended in the first round at the hands of the Utah Jazz, but in the following NBA season, they would shock the basketball world. Hakeem improved his scoring and defense with averages of 23.5 points, 11.5 rebounds, and 3.4 blocks on 52.6% shooting, leading his Rockets to a 51-31 record, but it would be in the playoffs where they would show what they were capable of. In the first round, they swept the Sacramento Kings in 3 games. In the second round, they defeated the high-octane offense of the Denver Nuggets in 6 games, and in the Western Conference Finals, they shockingly upset the defending champion Los Angeles Lakers in only 5 games. It was a series that Olajuwon dominated, even with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar often defending him, as Hakeem averaged 31 points, 11.2 rebounds, 2.2 steals, and 4 blocks on 52% shooting. This was a 23-year-old in his sophomore season dominating one of the greatest centers of all time in the Western Conference Finals. If people didn't realize how legendary Hakeem was going to be before this series took place, they certainly knew after it. Lakers head coach Pat Riley put it this way about defending Olajuwon: "We tried everything to stop him. We put 4 bodies on him, and we helped from different angles. He's just a great player." The Rockets ultimately lost in the NBA Finals to the 1986 Boston Celtics in 6 games, who are still considered one of the greatest teams of all time. But just the fact that the Rockets were even in that series was an impressive surprise, especially when you consider the fact that their 2 best players were only 23 and 25 years old. This team seemed destined to develop into NBA champions led by their twin towers. Sadly, they instead went on to become one of the great what-ifs of NBA history, as Sampson was dealing with severe knee issues over the next couple years, which would stop his development and eventually prematurely end his career. One can only wonder if Hakeem might have been able to win even more championships if Sampson had been healthy and available to develop alongside him. Instead, Hakeem would have to spend the prime of his career carrying the team as the lone superstar, but with his skills and overall talent, he was more than poised to do so. He had an extremely polished game for a big man, and had easily the greatest footwork ever seen from the center position. He had an offensive and defensive IQ that was through the roof. He was a terrific leader who had all the post moves, the mid-range game, the fadeaways, hook shots, and so on. There was basically no answer for him. During the best stretch of his career, from 1986 to 1996, he averaged 24.7 points, 12.4 rebounds, and an absurd 3.7 blocks on 51.4% shooting. During that stretch, he led the league in rebounding twice, led the league in blocks 3 times, won 2 Defensive Player of the Year awards, and won the MVP award in 1994. He also recorded a quadruple-double on March 29th of the 1990 season. His final stat line said 18 points, 16 rebounds, 10 assists, and 11 blocks in one of the greatest games of NBA history. Hakeem is one of only 4 players to ever record a quadruple-double. Think that's crazy? Well, it gets even crazier. Just 12 games before that quadruple-double, Hakeem had a game where he scored 29 points, 18 rebounds, 9 assists, and 11 blocks. No player in the history of the NBA has ever officially recorded multiple quadruple-doubles in their career, and Hakeem Olajuwon almost had 2 in the same month. You could argue that no player in league history ever filled up a stat sheet as much as Hakeem did. If he played in today's game, he would be a fantasy basketball monster. You could also make the argument that Hakeem Olajuwon is the greatest two-way player to ever live. Not only was he a great scorer, who was up close to 30 points a game during his prime, but he's also by far the all-time leader in block shots with a lead of almost 600 blocks. In the history of the NBA, only 10 players have won the Defensive Player of the Year award multiple times. Of those 10 players, no one averaged more points in his career than Hakeem Olajuwon, and once again, no one else is even close. With all of these stats, numbers, and achievements, you can begin to see how transcendent of a talent he was, but what people remember him for, more than anything, is the 2 championships he won in the mid-90s, and for good reason, because those were the times in the playoffs where he clearly stood out among his peers. During his runs in the 94 and 95 season, he dominated Patrick Ewing, Shaquille O'Neal, and David Robinson. Speaking of title runs, Hakeem had one of the greatest playoff series of all time in the 1995 Western Conference Finals. Up against him was David Robinson, who made 8 all-defense teams over his career, won a Defensive Player of the Year award, and was that season's league MVP. And even he looked completely helpless against the Dream, as Hakeem averaged 35.3 points, 12.5 rebounds, 5 assists, 1.3 steals, and 4.2 blocks on 56% shooting. Talk about showing up the MVP. Has anyone ever done it more strongly than in this series? This 95 Rockets team was an underdog 6th-seeded team that Olajuwon drugged to their 2nd straight NBA championship. I'm going to ask you something, and I want you to think about it for a minute. When's the last time that a player could say that he won back-to-back championships as the lone all-star on his team? LeBron can't say that. Kobe can't say that. Neither can Jordan, Magic, Isaiah, or even Bill Russell. Hakeem Olajuwon is the only player in NBA history to win back-to-back NBA championships as the only all-star on his team. If that doesn't tell you how good this man was, absolutely nothing will. As far as where he ranks among the greatest centers of all time, in my opinion, he's right there with Shaq. I'm even tempted to say he's ahead of Shaq. I know that's an extremely unpopular opinion, but I just feel like he dominated the game in more ways than Shaq did, from his overall skill set to his defense to the quadruple-double tendencies and so on. You also have to consider what they accomplished and who they had supporting them. Hakeem won 2 championships with no all-star support. If you give a prime Hakeem Olajuwon 8 years of a young and lethal Kobe Bryant, he's at least doubling his championship total. Throw in a year with Dwayne Wade where he averaged 35 points in the NBA Finals, and it's a wrap. Hakeem's legacy becomes one that's out of this world. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section. If you were to take any center in NBA history and put him on your favorite team in the modern NBA, how many centers would you take ahead of Hakeem? This should be an exciting comment section. Thanks for watching as always. Make sure to like and subscribe for more NBA content, and I'll see you guys in the next video.